I'm going to do the final video here. In the first two videos, the first video we covered epithelial tissues. The second video we covered connective tissues, and in this last video we're going to cover muscular tissues, which I actually think are the easiest of the bunch. There's only three of them: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle, and they're pretty easy to differentiate from one another. There's a lot of things that look similar between them, but then there's some pretty telltale signs of what looks different. So before I go to the flashcards, I want to start by talking about um, what's cool about muscle cells. Muscle cells, well, skeletal muscle cells, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to look at the bicep here. Well, biceps, I should say, because there's always an S. There's never, ever say bicep. That is not a word. Biceps. And it's referring to the number of times that it attaches. But you're going to notice if you take a look at the biceps, right, it attaches here on the scapula, but it also attaches here on the radius of your forearm. Every single muscle cell, called a myocyte, every single myocyte or muscle cell in this muscle runs the entire length of the muscle. So if your biceps is, I don't know how long your upper arm is, or your arm technically, remember, but let's say it's about a foot. Every cell in that organ then is 1 foot long. Now it's really skinny cells. You might be able to see it without a microscope. I guess it's possible. It's maybe the width of a human hair, probably even smaller though. But they're long. So some of the longest cells in your body are muscle cells. The longest cells in your body are actually axons, these nerve cells, but the second longest cells in all human bodies are muscle cells, which I think is kind of cool. So obviously, since these are incredibly long, we can't fit entire muscle cells onto a slide. So what I'm going to show you when I pull up the flashcards right now is pieces of muscle cells. So we're going to start with skeletal muscles. I'm going to pull my iPad up here for you. All right, here we go. I'm gonna actually see if I can make this a little bit smaller here. Hopefully this works. All right, so hopefully this works to have it like this. I'm gonna try to make it a little bit smaller here. Well, I suppose I could full screen it for now and I'll just come back. So right here you can kind of see, it looks like, I'm gonna kind of refer to it as like a fettuccine noodle or a linguine noodle, right? Look at this really long and flattened looking cell. You're going to notice it's got like these stripes on it, these striations. It clearly looks like there's stripes. These are absolutely indicative of skeletal muscle cells. Now, you do see these stripes on cardiac muscle tissue, but you won't see that on smooth muscle tissue. As a matter of fact, that's why smooth muscle is called smooth muscle, because you don't see this striated effect. So you can really only see maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 cells on this slide. The rest of these are cells as well, but what's happening is these muscle cells are actually coming toward you, and so they've been cut the other way. Imagine you have 4 pieces of linguine pasta lying left to right on the slide, but the rest of them were actually coming out toward you when they got smushed between the microscope slide. So you don't see the striations on them. You can see the nuclei, all of these little blue dots, but you don't actually see the length of the cells. So that's something I want to talk about right now. So I'm gonna actually write that down. So right here, whoops, let me make the marker bigger. There we go. So right here. So this is one muscle cell. And a muscle cell is called a myocyte, remember. You have another one here, that's 2, that's 3, and then there's 4. There might even be a 5th one right here, right up here. But you can also see these striations. So I'm going to just put some striations on here just in case you can't see them that well in your flashcard. You should maybe draw them in. All right. These are really, really a telltale sign of skeletal muscles. But the last thing that you can see, and so I'm going to draw them in a little bit darker, is the number of nuclei that skeletal muscle has. There's lots. So there's a nucleus. There's a nucleus. Right? Here's a nucleus. They're everywhere. Okay, so I'm just drawing a bunch of nuclei because that's going to be important when I label the back of your flashcard. So let me grab a black marker here. All right, so the specific tissue type, we're kind of done labeling, actually, believe it or not. The specific tissue type is skeletal muscle. Obviously, the main tissue type is muscular. And its location on the body is attached to bones. That's what gives it its name. The rest of the muscles, tissues are not attached to your bones. They don't move your bones. Functions, obviously, to move the skeleton, which I just said. Now, these are the three things I want you to know about all muscle tissues. One, I want you to be able to tell me if there's one nucleus per cell or more than one nucleus per cell. And there's very clearly more than one nucleus per cell on this slide. So we say that it is multi-nucleated, right? More than one per cell. Also, I want you to be able to tell me, is this muscle tissue striated or not? Does it have the stripes? And this one clearly does. So we say that it's striated. And then finally, do people control this muscle tissue voluntarily? Do they have to think about it when they contract these muscle cells, or is it controlled involuntarily? And for the most part, about 99.9% of the time, it is voluntarily controlled, right? We consciously have to think about flexing our skeletal muscles, but there are involuntary muscle spasms called myoclonic jerks. So I am going to say both here. Well, actually, what I'll write down is voluntary with involuntary spasms. Technically on the test, if I ask you how skeletal muscle is controlled, you could say both, involuntarily and voluntarily. So that's skeletal muscle. Pretty easy, one down. So let's talk cardiac muscle. This is a terrible, that's kind of why I had the thing up here. Cardiac muscle just looks awful here. So I'm going to show you a better cardiac muscle slide. We don't have very good slides of cardiac muscle in class. So cardiac muscle, you can see the nuclei again. You can see that it's striated quite clearly. And then there's one thing that gives cardiac muscle away, and it's these, they're called intercalated discs. They're little connections from neighboring muscle cells at the sarcomere of two muscle cells. So let's talk about them for 1 second. Hold on, here we go. Whoops. Ugh. There we go. Let's talk intercalated discs. I'm actually pointing to an intercalated disc here on this muscle cell, but there's so much that you can't see on this. So I'm just going to have you work with me here. So I'm going to draw one nucleus there, one nucleus there. We'll do another nucleus here, another nucleus there, another nucleus there. But what you can't see, I mean, you can kind of see this little fold. That fold is incredibly important. Right, there's another one there, there's another one there, there's another one there. Cardiac muscle cells are much, much smaller than skeletal muscle cells. That's because they don't run the length of the organ, but we want them to work together because obviously when your heart beats, we want all of the cells to beat in sync with one another. So these intercalated discs allow that to happen. So let's talk a little bit about these things. Okay, sorry. Actually, one last thing I'm going to draw on here. Pugsley, come. I'm sorry, my dog is ringing his bell. He needs to go outside and go to the bathroom, but I have to finish up this video first. Pugsley, come. I promise I will let him out as soon as I'm done with this video. You gotta wait, Pugsley. Can you sit? You are being immortalized on YouTube right now, Pugsley. He's a crazy dog. Okay, so I drew some striations here for you that you cannot see. So, because I'm going to talk a little bit about this now. So, it is important to know, don't recognize muscles by the color though. recognize it by this other stuff that I'm going to be writing down here because I have multiple colors of all of the muscle tissue. So this is cardiac muscle. Main tissue type, again, obviously, is muscular. Location on the body is your heart, of course. Functions, I mean, that's super obvious, to allow the heart to beat. And then important notes. Remember, there are those three things I want you to know, but I'm going to add something to this one. So the first one I wanted you to know last time was, is it multinucleated or is it uninucleated, one nucleus per slide or per cell? Technically, it's hard to say about cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle can have up to 4 nuclei per cell. Some of them do. However, most cardiac muscle cells, which are called cardiomyocytes, most of them are a single nucleus. That's why I only drew one here, a single nucleus per cell. So I am going to say uninucleated, even though there are exceptions. All right, the next thing I want you to know is it striated? You can't see it very well here, but remember, you could see it pretty well here. Here, you can easily see the striations in this picture that I found online. So yes, it is striated. Let me go back to full screen here. It is indeed striated. So I'm going to write that down. And then lastly, is it controlled voluntarily? Do you think about it contracting, or does it happen all by itself involuntarily? And this is obviously involuntarily. Thank the good Lord, we do not have to think about our heart beating, because every time we fell asleep, our heart would stop. So involuntarily controlled. And then the last one I want you to add, so this is an addition, 4, is it has intercalated discs. Right, these are unique. This is how you identify cardiac muscle. If you find during the lab practical, if you see these thick bands going down, going across the muscle fiber, the muscle cell, that is an intercalated disc. And I'm just going to draw your attention, those we labeled yellow. So that should help you find them. Whoops, if you're sticking with me, whoops, label those yellow. All right, one left, smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is the easiest. We had talked a little bit about skeletal muscle being really thick and flattened, kind of like linguine pasta or fettuccine. If that is the case, smooth muscle is angel hair pasta. It's that really thin stuff. It's incredibly thin. It has no striations and that's what gives it its name, smooth. It doesn't look rough to the texture. The nuclei are really elongated as well. I mean, this is, again, really pixelated and hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this as big as I can. If I were to draw smooth muscle on a slide, right, it would just be long, really long cells like this. Actually, these are too fat. They'd be actually much skinnier than this, but then they'd have one nucleus per cell, and that's it. These are also much shorter cells than skeletal muscles, but that's just because our smooth the organs that have smooth muscle in them, like our stomach, they're just not as big of organs, to be honest. So your urethra has smooth muscle in it. I mean, think about pretty much the muscle that lines your digestive tract, your urinary tract, all your hollowed out, all your hollow organs are going to have smooth muscle in them. So, all right, let's talk about that now. I'm going to go back a size here. So this is smooth muscle. Main tissue type, muscular. Location on the body, I just talked about that. This is going to be lining your hollow organs. So remember, these are organs of your GI tract, your digestive tract, urinary tract, etc. Function of smooth muscle, obviously to move food through, to move urine through, whatever. So I'm just going to write move food urine, etc. And then the same three. So the first one was, I apparently cannot write 3 over there. Okay. The first one is it multinucleated or uninucleated? It is uninucleated. There's only one nucleus per cell. All right, next one. Is it striated? Are there little stripes? No, it is not striated, non-striated. And then finally, do you control this voluntarily or does this get controlled involuntarily? Do you have to think about food as it moves through your digestive tract? No, you do not. It is involuntarily controlled. And that is the last flashcard. So those are the 3 muscle tissues. This is a much shorter video. I hope you are all happy for that. I think they're pretty simple. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, that should about wrap it up. Take care.